Hello everyone, welcome to Skills Build Training YouTube channel. Myself Muhammad Zubair, and this channel is all about showing you how to become an IT pro really fast. So the topic of today's video is top 15 Raspberry Pi project ideas for beginners. So without any further ado, let's get started. Number 1. Learn scripting. Well, I would suggest you to consider this one before moving or before thinking about using Raspberry Pi. Programming and Linux commands are two things that every professional should know, and if you are about to get started on Raspberry Pi and Linux, you should keep this on your to-do list. For the most exciting projects based on Raspberry Pi and Linux that you will discover later, using the command line correctly is prerequisite. Yes, you can always copy and paste the tutorial without understanding anything, but there will be no fun doing the stuff like that. There are thousands of commands available on Linux and so on Raspberry Pi. But you don't need to know all of them. In fact, with a good understanding of the Linux file organization and maybe 50 commands maximum, you should be able to do anything. That may seem a lot, but you will get to it step by step. Now let's move towards the practical projects. Second one is control lights of your home. There are a lot of tools available through that you can control the appliances of your home. There are different kinds of them. Some of them can be handled from the Wi-Fi and some of them can be handled using the Bluetooth as well, but they are costly. So what if I tell you that you can make your own module through that you can control the lights of your home? If you are familiar with the Philips Hue, then it will be really easy for you. Philips Hue has the hub that connects everything, and it also has an API. It is possible to handle everything using some Python scripts. So basically, the system retrieves the sunset and sunrise times from the external API and then works accordingly. So I would suggest you to give this project a go. Number 3. Automated cooling system. Obviously, we do not want our air conditioner to waste energy while we are away. With a Raspberry Pi driven cooling system, we can remotely control our device regardless of our location. So when we arrive home, the temperature will just feel right. All we have to do is to send an email via Google and the cooling fan will start working. We will also receive an email once the temperature reaches a certain temperature, and the fan will get turned off by itself. The things which you might need for this project are Raspberry Pi Zero, temperature sensor, axial fan, general purpose transistor NPN, resistor of 220 ohms, male-female jumper wire, breadboard, 9 volts 1 ampere switching wall power supply, and we will also need some apps and online services for this project, like we will need Raspberry Pi Raspbian, PuTTY, Python 3.8 and Python module for GIPO. Let's move on to the fourth project. Number 4. Weather collection station. If you are a beginner, then the good news is this project might turn out to be one of the best and creative Raspberry Pi based project for you. By building your own weather station that collects and then analyzes atmospheric data, you will learn the fundamental of Raspberry Pi, and it will also increase your experience for later Raspberry Pi projects. You can choose from a vast number of physical sensors and Python libraries to control the functioning. First of all, you should develop and build a prototype weather station on a breadboard using a jumper wire. Once you are done and you have got everything running and tested, now you can turn this prototype into a more robust build so that you can deploy it outside or on a bigger scale, and it will be reliable in the long term. Things you might need for this project are Raspberry Pi, either one that has built-in wireless connectivity or has a Wi-Fi dongle, 2 RJ11 breakout boards, some 5mm pitch PCB mount screw terminal blocks, a DS18B20 digital thermal probe, two 4.7 kilo ohms resistors, a breadboard, some jumper wires, an anemometer, wind vane, and rain gauge. Along with that, you will also need a MCP3008 analog to digital converter integrated circuit, a BME280 pressure, temperature, and humidity sensor, weatherproof enclosures. In terms of software, you will need the Oracle Raspberry Pi Weather Station software, BME280 Python library, and MariaDB database server. Number 5. Wireless printer. If you have an old printer that you are not using, or if it is an old one, you can make it as print server. All you need for this is a Raspberry Pi board and storage space. It will be one of the best Raspberry Pi projects for beginners and the students who are trying to build some quick Raspberry Pi projects. That print server can be accessed from any device. Print server can be connected from multiple computers to a single or multiple printers wired or wirelessly. With the help of the print server, you can access your printer with multiple devices and you can send the print command to it from any of the connected device. You will need Raspberry Pi 3, SD card, 8GB at least, USB printer, Ethernet cable, power supply for the Pi. I would recommend you to use the Raspberry Pi 3 for this project as it comes with built-in wireless support. However, you can use a Wi-Fi dongle for utilizing previous boards. You will use the common Unix printing system software for running the print server. And you should use the Samba for allowing Windows devices to use the Raspberry Pi print server. Number 6. Raspberry Pi distance sensor. If you are into building and developing the real-life DIY projects, this project is for you. And it will enhance your skill set and it will prepare you for the future challenges. Building a distance sensor project will increase your skill set, and along with that, you can include this project into your resume as this one is the practical project and it addresses the applied problem. For this project, we will need different components like use the HCSR04 ultrasonic sensor, use of RPI GPIO module to access the control of the GPIO pins on your Raspberry Pi board. You will also need to use a voltage divider to drop the 5 volts output from the sensor to 3.3 volts for your Raspberry Pi. And you will also need a 3D printer for creating outer layers to protect the sensor. Along with these things, you will need Raspberry Pi 2 or 3, microcard, ultrasonic sensor, 1 and 2 kilo ohm resistors, breadboard wires, power supply, and at the end Ethernet or Wi-Fi dongle. Number 7. Network monitoring tool. If you spend a lot of time on the internet and you work a lot on different networks, there are chances that you will be running multiple servers for different purposes. They can be professional and personal one as well. We can build a network monitor on Raspberry Pi for monitoring the network activities conveniently. Your network skills will also get tested and will be used in this project. I would recommend you to select Nagios Pi, that is a lightweight server monitoring distro for such Raspberry Pi projects. Configure the monitoring preferences of Nagios Pi to monitor your network traffic effectively. We suggest you start with the basic metrics, then beef up progressively. After that, attach a display to your Pi board depending on how you want your system to look like. Number 8. Twitter bot. As we all know that Twitter is one of the biggest social media platform out there and is used by the majority of the users which are considered as the mature one. We can do a lot of stuff on Twitter with the help of a bot. For example, what if you could use a bot for sending automated tweets? With a Raspberry Pi bot, it's possible. We will need to sign up on Twitter and we will need to get the Twitter APIs for this project. Twitter has many dedicated APIs for many purposes, and for bot, it has the API as well. That API will let you create such bots on Raspberry Pi. We just need to program our Pi board with Python for the setup. For this purpose, we can use the Python library. It is undoubtedly one of the most exciting projects on a Raspberry Pi. Number 9. Time-lapse camera. If you are into photography and you have a lot of interest for trying new things with technology, this project will be interesting for you. You can build a time-lapse camera with the help of a Raspberry Pi. You can do that easily by using the blinked add-on of the Raspberry Pi board. You can attach the camera to the wearable item and it will allow you to see exactly what the camera is seeing. You will require a Pi camera or Pi Noir camera along with the compatible cable and a Pi board for this project. Then attach the camera to the Pi board and use the Python code for this to work. Other than that, you will need a micro USB power bank as well. And if we talk about the software, if you are using the optional Blink, you will need to install the library code on your Raspberry Pi Zero. This requires an internet connection. And in case if you are using a Raspberry Pi Zero without wireless connectivity, you have two options. Either connect the Raspberry Pi Zero to the internet using a USB dongle or transfer your SD card into Raspberry Pi with an internet connection to install the libraries and then transfer it back to the Raspberry Pi Zero. So that was all about it, and now let's move on to the 10th project. Number 10. Raspberry Pi as VPN. In this time of globalization of information, at some point we have to use the VPN to access the information from somewhere which is not accessible to us in a normal way. There are a lot of VPNs available and some of them are free of cost and some of them are paid one. What if I tell you that you can make the Raspberry Pi as your VPN server? Basically, the VPN server are used to access the information from behind a safe access point. So this project will need you to handle the Pi network's activity, and with this project in your hand, you will be saving huge amount of money that you have to spend otherwise on monthly or yearly subscriptions. I would recommend you to use the Pi VPN or OpenVPN server implementation for this project. Choose the right VPN provider as there are a lot of available, then configure a static IP address for Raspberry Pi board you are going to use. Then I would suggest you to utilize the 2048-bit RSA encryption. And at the end, you may install the Pi VPN GUI for managing users and adding new devices conveniently. Number 11. An AI assistant. As we are into the age of AI and NLP, we are getting more and more advancement in this field, and with that, we are getting more and more sophisticated tools and components. If you want to try your hands in this vast field, building the AI assistant can be one of the most interesting and best projects you will do on the Raspberry Pi. You will need and utilize the Google Cloud SDK and Google Cloud Assistant for this kind of project. In order to do this project, register a free account for the Google Assistant through the Google Console Action Dashboard, then set up and configure audio for your Google Assistant account. Then your Raspberry Pi needs to be authorized for the Google account, and then set up Google Assistant to auto start at boot time on your Raspberry Pi. The equipment you will be needing for this project composed of many things like Raspberry Pi, micro SD card, power supply, USB microphone, speakers, Ethernet, network connection, or the Wi-Fi dongle. Number 12. Raspberry Pi Wi-Fi extender. You might have encountered a problem of your Wi-Fi router covering a well-rounded area and handling the multiple devices at a time. A Wi-Fi extender is a physical device that extends the range of the area for you, and you will have the wireless connectivity. It is a really simple job to build a Raspberry Pi based extender, and it also addresses the common problem. So we can say that this solution will be a practical one. So what you will be doing in this project? Well, you will set up a Wi-Fi extender by configuring the wpa-supplicant.conf file in your Raspberry Pi. Then restart your DHCP service and adjust the host path configuration of your Pi. Then build a solid case to protect your Wi-Fi extender. And by the way, this is optional. At the end, add a VPN server to such Raspberry projects for additional functionality. Number 13. Crypto mining. Every decade, we have seen the boom of one particular technology or some scientific innovation. This decade is going to be a crypto decade, and it is expected that everything will be covered by the cryptocurrency and even the bank transactions as well. So, more and more people are trying to make more money from their computers and by creating the giant GPU farms. The more resources you possess, the more reward you will get. But unfortunately, Raspberry Pi is not that much powerful. But our goal here is to learn how it works and not making the money. You do not need to be an expert on Raspberry Pi to explore this project. In a very little time, you can install a miner on the Raspberry Pi and then connect it to a cryptocurrency network. So give a go to this project and a whole new world to explore will be in front of you. Number 14. Build a smart TV. In this modern age, we all want to go smart. There are a lot of things available in the market which are called as smart. For example, smartphone, smartwatch, smart TV, etc. But all these come with a hefty price tag. What if I tell you that you can make your old monitor as a smart TV? All you need is a Raspberry Pi computer and an old monitor. This one is amongst the best project based on Raspberry Pi. So I would suggest you to give this project a try. You will need to utilize the OMX image viewer software for such Raspberry projects. Install the live JPG8 dev and LivePNG 12 dev modules into your Pi. You can set up Kodi for further improvements in your smart TV project. You will be needing Raspberry Pi 32GB micro SD card, a high quality supported power adapter and a remote. And with that, let's move on to the last project in our list, and that is NAS File Storage. Well, we can convert our storage device into a dedicated server with the help of a network attached storage server. And we can use Raspberry Pi in order to create a NAS server. These servers enable us to transfer large amount of files at a high pace. If you look and find for a NAS File Server or NAS File Server in the market, you will notice that they are costly. So obviously and undoubtedly, it is a great project to test your skills and get a relatively inexpensive NAS File Server. For this project, we just have to configure our Pi board for using the SSH protocol and need to use the Samba for setting the network. It would be better if we format our storage drives with the NTFS format for this project. And I hope now you must have learned a lot of things. If that is the case, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon along with it. If you have something to ask, please leave a comment below. We will get back to you as soon as possible. Till the next video, take care.